In the early hours of May 5, 2009, a quiet neighborhood in Columbia, Illinois, became the scene of a terrible crime that would shock the entire nation. As the town slept, a man who seemed like a loving husband and father was secretly carrying out a sinister plan. Inside the Coleman home, the soft creak of footsteps on the stairs and the unsettling hiss of red spray paint signaled the start of a nightmare. Sherry Coleman and her two young sons, Garrett and Gavin, were peacefully asleep, completely unaware that their lives were about to be tragically ended by the person they trusted the most. Sherry Ann was born on July 3, 1977, in Berwyn, Illinois, USA, but her family eventually relocated to Florida. Sherry and her brother were raised in a Christian household, guided by their parents' strong faith in Jesus Christ. Sherry was a responsible and disciplined young woman, dedicated to her studies, and known for her radiant appearance and bright eyes. During her time in high school in Largo, Florida, she formed a close friendship with a classmate named Tara Lintz. The two girls, almost like sisters, supported each other through the exciting teenage years, filled with music, dances, and shared secrets. However, their paths diverged when Tara had to repeat a grade, while Sherry graduated without any issues in 1996. After graduation, Sherry joined the U.S. Air Force while her family moved back to Illinois. Sherry pursued her military career with enthusiasm, holding on to her dream of someday meeting the love of her life and starting a family that reflected the values she had learned at home. In May 1997, while attending a military training seminar at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, 19-year-old Sherry met Christopher Coleman. Christopher was born on March 20, 1977, to Ronald and Connie Coleman, a strict evangelical couple. The Colemans had two other sons, but only the name of the youngest, Brad Coleman, is well known. The family's rigid upbringing left little room for leisure. One incident from Christopher's teenage years highlights the influence of his parents' strict rules. After being persuaded by his classmates to drink alcohol for the first time, Christopher was so overwhelmed with guilt that he confessed to his basketball coach. Despite this incident, Christopher was a well-behaved and diligent student who never got into trouble. After high school, he joined the Marine Corps, where he became a skilled dog handler, a role that led him to meet Sherry. The connection between Sherry and Christopher was immediate. Their conversations, shared meals, and mutual goals quickly brought them closer. Within just 3 months of dating, Sherry became pregnant. True to his values, Christopher proposed to her right away. On August 8, 1997, the couple drove to Chicago for the weekend and got married. Their first child, Garrett Coleman, was born on April 30, 1998. The couple settled in a 2-story building in Columbia, Illinois, and on January 25, 2000, welcomed their second son, Gavin Coleman. Life seemed perfect for the young family. Sherry felt incredibly blessed to be a mother, dedicating herself fully to her children, whose laughter and antics brought more joy than she had ever imagined. Christopher's support was crucial, especially as the couple occasionally led financial planning seminars together, Their fortunes improved further when Joyce Meyer, the religious speaker, offered Christopher a job on her security team. Thanks to his hard work and previous connections, Christopher quickly rose through the ranks and eventually became her personal bodyguard, earning an annual salary of around $100,000. Although Christopher's job required frequent travel, taking him away from his family, it also allowed the couple to buy a $200,000 home in 2005. The spacious, well-maintained house was located in the peaceful Columbia Lakes neighborhood in Monroe County, right by a lake. With a two-story layout and 3 bedrooms, the home became a place where Sherry could focus on her family and volunteer work. In her spare time, she also served as a member of the Destiny Church and participated in a missionary organization. As the months went by, Sherry gradually became more accustomed to her husband's frequent absences. Fortunately, she and her children made friends within their neighborhood, which helped ease the loneliness. Just a few houses down lived Vanessa, whose son, Brandon, was around the same age as Gavin. It didn't take long for Gavin and his older brother to start visiting Brandon regularly, often staying over for sleepovers with their mother's permission. Another neighbor who became close to Christopher was Justin Barlow, a detective sergeant with the Columbia Police Department. Despite the seemingly idyllic life of children's birthday parties, sports events, Sunday barbecues, and the usual bills to pay, Christopher began feeling trapped in a passionless existence. In October 2008, during one of his many work trips to Florida, Christopher decided to reach out to Tara. Although they were no longer as close as they once had been, he and his wife had maintained some contact with Tara out of respect for their past friendship. When they reconnected, Christopher learned that Tara had divorced 4 years earlier. Without children or significant obligations, Tara had attended the University of Tampa and was working as a waitress. Outgoing, fiery, and somewhat wild, Tara quickly captivated Christopher, leading to a passionate affair that began in earnest on November 5, 2008. Upon returning home, Christopher wrote a note on his computer, expressing how meeting Tara had completely changed his life. Tara, however, wasn't satisfied with their sporadic encounters and began pressuring him to leave his wife. Though he shared her desire, Christopher was haunted by the knowledge that his employer, Joyce Meyer, had made it clear that any employee who divorced would face demotion or termination. Considering the significant benefits of his job, this was simply not an option for him. By December 2008, Christopher had devised a much more drastic plan to solve his dilemma: eliminate his family entirely. His first step was to create an email account from which he sent himself threatening messages filled with obscenities, posing as a mysterious stalker who ranted about his boss's ministry, accusing her of dark deeds. He then escalated his plan by sending similar emails to Sherry, warning of a brutal attack on the family, with a particular focus on Christopher himself. Understanding that Joyce Meyer was highly respected worldwide, yet aware that some people generally despise televangelists, Christopher began telling those around him that he was the target of such hatred. To his surprise, Sherry soon became convinced that there were enough fanatics out there and overcame her initial fear. Frustrated and consumed by his infatuation with Tara, Christopher started to lash out at Sherry, complaining that he felt trapped in a life he detested because of her and the children. The once peaceful and harmonious household turned hostile, with Sherry confiding in a few friends about her suffering, even telling them that if anything bad happened to her, they could be sure that Christopher was responsible. Despite the growing tension at home, the couple continued to maintain the appearance of a happy family to their neighbors and acquaintances, while Christopher and Tara's relationship deepened. They even took short trips to Hawaii and Arizona, where they fantasized about their future together. Christopher took steps to remove Sherry's name from the deed to their house, and soon afterward, a new threat arrived, this time in the family's mailbox. The ominous letter was delivered while Christopher was away, terrifying Sherry. She could never have imagined that the person behind these anonymous attacks was her own husband. When Christopher returned, he reported the incident to the police. Justin Barlow, eager to help his neighbors, repositioned his home security camera to cover the Coleman's mailbox, and the Columbia police increased patrols in the area, but no suspicious activity was ever observed. Meanwhile, Christopher did everything he could to keep Tara from leaving him, promising her that he would hand Sherry the divorce papers on May 5, 2009. He even gave Tara an engagement ring, which she accepted with joy. They tentatively planned their wedding for January 2010. Tara registered on wedding websites and began searching for houses for them to move into together. They also planned to take a Caribbean cruise on June 14, 2009, and even discussed baby names for the child they dreamed of having. Christopher documented all these details on his computer, and his phone contained numerous explicit selfies and videos he had exchanged with Tara over the months. By late April 2009, with a clear plan in mind, Christopher purchased a can of red spray paint from a store in St. Louis, keeping the receipt in his desk instead of discarding it. On the night of Monday, May 4, 2009, Garrett, who had just turned 11 4 days earlier, was at Vanessa's house with Gavin. Since Brandon's 9th birthday was the next day, Garrett asked if they could stay over so they could be the first to wish him a happy birthday. Vanessa, smiling from ear to ear, told him to run home, ask his mother, and pack their school bags. Garrett ran back home, but returned shortly after with slumped shoulders. His father had told him it wasn't a suitable occasion and that they needed to be home by 8:30 p.m. Although Vanessa was puzzled and disappointed, she respected their decision, promising the boys they could have a sleepover the following Saturday instead. At the designated time, she and Brandon said goodbye to their neighbors. That evening, Sherry, Garrett, Gavin, and Christopher had dinner together in a tense silence, only interrupted by the usual chatter of the children. A few hours later, in the early hours of Tuesday, May 5, 2009, when everyone was sound asleep, Christopher finally carried out his gruesome plan, leaving behind a horrifying scene with chilling messages spray-painted on the walls. He then got into his car, and as he drove out of the garage, Justin Barlow's security camera captured him. At 5:43 a.m., Christopher began his drive toward southern St. Louis County. Along the way, he dialed his wife's number and left her a voicemail. After that, he sent her a text message and tried calling again as he headed back home. The investigation later revealed that he took a much longer route than usual on his return. By 6:43 a.m., Christopher called Justin Barlow expressing his concern. He mentioned that he had been at the gym and, after finishing his workout, had tried calling Sherry to wake her up, but she hadn't answered. Alarmed by the recent threats the family had received, Justin quickly dressed, contacted his dispatch at the Columbia Police Department, grabbed his gun, handcuffs, and radio, and headed over to check on the Coleman family. When Justin arrived at the Coleman's porch, a police officer was already there. They rang the doorbell, but no one responded. Moving to the back of the house, they noticed a basement window was open. Radioing for backup, they entered the home cautiously, with the police officer leading since he was the only one in uniform. The air inside was thick with the smell of fresh paint, and as they reached the main floor, they saw the source of the odor. Disturbing messages spray-painted in red on the dining room walls and over the frames of the family photos. Just as additional officers arrived, Christopher also pulled up to the scene. The police officer asked him to wait outside, then joined his colleagues inside. But before he could even step over the kitchen threshold, Jason's screams shattered the eerie calm of the house and the neighborhood as he and the other officers discovered the lifeless bodies of Garrett, Gavin, and Sherry on the second floor. All three had ligature marks on their necks. Justin struggled to keep his composure, aware that Christopher might be the person they were looking for. When the officers returned to the street to inform Christopher of the grim discovery, he collapsed to the ground, sobbing and seemingly in shock. Soon after, his father and his boss, Joyce Meyer, arrived and did their best to console him, seating him in an ambulance. Strangely, Christopher never asked what exactly had happened to his family. Christopher was later taken to the police station, where he told investigators that Sherry had been alive when he left the house at 5:45 a.m. to go to the gym. When asked if they had argued the night before, he denied it, claiming that she had fallen asleep in his arms while they watched a movie on the couch. However, the officers noticed scratches on his arms, and when questioned about them, Christopher couldn't explain how he had gotten them. He also revealed that he and Sherry had experienced some marital issues toward the end of 2008, but had resolved them with the help of a therapist. Meanwhile, as the time for school approached, Vanessa finally noticed the police presence outside the Coleman home. Seeing the yellow crime scene tape encircling the house sent a chill down her spine. The once peaceful neighborhood was now the scene of a horrific crime, drawing national attention. Throughout the day, police searched for clues, even sending divers into the nearby lake and examining storm drains. Medical reports, including autopsy results, indicated that the victims had died between 3 o'clock and 5 a.m. Behind the scenes, the Columbia Police Department was determined to do whatever it took to find the person responsible for this brutal attack. Christopher, meanwhile, made arrangements for the funeral and burial to be held in Chester, going back on his initial offer to Sherry's family to have a service in Chicago so that all her relatives could attend. Upset by this, Sherry's mother and brother, who lived in the Chicago suburbs, took legal action to enforce the original plan. Eventually, they reached an agreement that included a funeral in Chester on Saturday, a visitation in the Chicago area on Monday, and a burial planned for Tuesday at Evergreen Cemetery in Chester. On Tuesday, May 12, 2009, family and loved ones gathered to say their final goodbyes to Sherry, Gavin, and Garrett. Later, in a trembling voice, Sherry's mother spoke to the media, expressing hope that their tragedy might save others from similar fates. As the investigation progressed, detectives found it suspicious that the primary target of the supposed threats, Christopher, had somehow emerged unscathed. This was compounded by surveillance footage from the neighbor's security camera, which showed that by the time Christopher left in his car, his family had already been killed, and no one else had entered the house afterward. The idea that someone would target a well-known bodyguard like Christopher also seemed far-fetched. Interviews with Sherry's friends revealed the marital discord, but a crime driven by such motives didn't seem entirely plausible either. Unwilling to leave any stone unturned, the investigation team had a forensic computer expert track Christopher's activities on his laptop, searching for any clues that might expose the truth behind the tragedy. Soon, Christopher's affair with Tara was uncovered, leading detectives to travel to Florida to interview her. When the news leaked to the press, a lawyer hired by Christopher claimed he had no knowledge of anyone by that woman's name. Around that time, Christopher, accompanied by his parents, visited the cemetery. While searching for digital evidence that could link him to the crime, The forensic expert discovered that the anonymous letters had been generated on Christopher's laptop using his work login. Additionally, handwriting experts analyzed the red spray-painted graffiti and concluded that the writing matched Christopher's. Further damning evidence came to light when a detective found a receipt on Christopher's desk for red paint, matching the brand and type used in the crime scene graffiti. When it was finally determined that no DNA other than Christopher's was found on the victims, the investigative team was confident they had their man. As a result, on May 19, 2009, Christopher was arrested, and the following day, May 20, 2009, he was formally charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. Christopher pleaded not guilty. His trial began in mid-April 2011. To ensure impartiality, the jury was selected from another state. Due to the immense media attention and concerns for Christopher's safety, he had to attend the hearings wearing a bulletproof vest. While the jury was shown explicit photographs and messages exchanged between Christopher and his mistress, the judge ruled that certain videos were too obscene to be presented in court. Tara had no choice but to testify during the trial. She arrived at the courthouse dressed in a black skirt and blazer, a fuchsia blouse and high heels, wearing the engagement ring Christopher had given her. For 20 minutes, she detailed their relationship, highlighting the motive suggested by the prosecution. Later, in a recorded testimony, Joyce Meyer told the jury that although Christopher would not have been fired if he had divorced his wife, he could have faced disciplinary action, including termination, if he had committed adultery. Christopher chose to remain silent throughout the trial. After 14 hours of deliberation over 2 days, on May 5, 2011, the jury found him guilty on all counts. Christopher reacted with a look of despair, lowering his head into his hands. His family, appearing somber, immediately left the courtroom and retreated to a nearby room. Meanwhile, Sherry's mother broke down in tears, prompting the judge to warn against outward displays of emotion. Despite this, some relatives and friends of Sherry and her children couldn't help but express their relief. Around 8 p.m., as Christopher was led into the sheriff's vehicle, a crowd of about 150 people cheered along the cordoned-off path from the courthouse exit, with some drivers even honking their car horns in support. Shortly thereafter, during the sentencing hearing, Christopher Coleman was sentenced to 3 concurrent life terms, without the possibility of parole for the murders of Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin Coleman. Outside the courthouse, police officers and officials embraced the victims' families. From prison, Christopher continued to give interviews in which he maintained his innocence, admitting his affair with Tara and acknowledging that it might have harmed him, but he stubbornly clung to the implausible claim that his family was targeted as revenge for his professional association with Joyce Meyer. In March 2019, Christopher's legal team secured a virtual hearing in an attempt to overturn the conviction. However, in July 2020, the judge once again denied the possibility of a new trial. As a result, Christopher remains incarcerated at the Wisconsin Correctional Institution. It seems that, due to his actions and decisions, he will never have the chance to live the life he once longed for. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.